Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode I'm joined by co-host Greg Ramsey. From the professional wrestling industry's number 2 promotion to carrying that promotion to the top of the business, they are the most popular, most controversial faction of all time, and their influence is still being felt today. We're talking about the nWo. Formed in 1996 by Hulk Hogan, Scott Hall, and Kevin Nash, the New World Order storyline was an idea created by WCW Executive Vice President Eric Bischoff. Bischoff was inspired to form the nWo after attending New Japan Pro Wrestling's Battle Formation show at the Tokyo Dome on April 29, 1996. Upon its debut in WCW, the nWo immediately set the pro wrestling world on fire. The Big Bang of the nWo took place on July 7, 1996, when Hulk Hogan infamously turned heel by attacking Randy Savage. In doing so, Hogan was revealed as the mysterious third man in Hall and Nash's hostile takeover of WCW. The nWo ran roughshod over every top WCW star that stood in their way. From Sting to the Four Horsemen, every star that stepped up to Hogan's group were immediately destroyed. The nWo were the top draw of the company and led WCW over rival WWE, becoming the new number 1 promotion in the world. The nWo's strength grew with Hogan's WCW World Championship reigns and the reveal of Eric Bischoff as the storyline mind of the faction. New members also bolstered the angle, including Six-Pac, the Giant, Scott Steiner, Randy Savage, and a host of others. Sting's star rose thanks to his feud with the nWo, which saw him become a brand new, wildly popular character inspired by comic books The Crow. Sting vs. the nWo became the top storyline in WCW, and the same happened later with Bill Goldberg when he exploded onto the scene and defeated Hogan for the WCW Championship on July 6, 1998. The nWo's membership roster eventually swelled to a preposterous size, and the decline came when the group splintered with the nWo Wolfpack, which ultimately opened the door for other mini-factions to evolve over the next few years. The nWo's influence is still being felt today, thanks to the Bullet Club in New Japan, and for longtime fans who still consider the faction to be the most influential group in pro wrestling history. And that's the lowdown on the nWo. Okay, so I'm watching this nWo documentary, and this thing is back, I forgot what year it was, because as you know, dude, the WWE Network has a bunch of stuff, and of course a bunch of nWo stuff, and I don't know that I've actually seen this one. I've seen the Monday Night Wars thing a million times, so I can't say that I've actually watched this one. This thing's narrated by somebody, and it's pieced together, and it's got old interviews and stuff, but nothing, I guess, current to the time they actually made this. But I'm just now it's just started, right? So I'm watching the bit where Scott Hall first showed up on Nitro. What a moment, dude. What a moment that was, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it hit me out of the blue. I was like, I didn't even know that he and Nash were coming to WCW from up north. And I was like, wow, it's Razor Ramon in WCW. And he's calling himself Scott Hall now, which I faintly remembered Scott Hall from the AWA years before, and there he is. He's got a mic, and I think he was dressed in blue jeans or something, and he's going on, and I remember these final words he said before he walked out of the ring. He said, "You want a war? You're gonna get one." And I was like, "Wow, what is going on here?"
Yeah, man. And dude, we were, I don't know how old we were at the time. This was 96.
Yes.
Yeah, so I was, oh my God, was I 20 at the time? Is that right? 19, I was 23. Is that right? My God, that's a long time ago. Holy God. So yeah, it's a long time ago. And yeah, man, so like, that moment was huge. I was like you, man. I didn't really understand what was going on. He had the denim jeans, the denim vest, and he showed up, and he's doing the Razor Ramon voice. He's got the toothpicks. He's got the spit curl in the front like Superman, and And it's the Razor Ramon gimmick, the entire thing from top to bottom. And, you know, the voice didn't last long, as we all know, because he had to stop doing it because, man, WWE took these guys to court quick because they were, you know, leading everyone to believe they had been sent, like you said, from up north. And, dude, we believed it. I mean, in 96, I mean, of course, the internet was a thing, obviously. But I can't say that any of us in our little clique of friends, and an interesting word there, clique, right? But in our clique of friends, I don't know of any of us that were really, really dialed in to like social media, if that was even a thing at that time, or the internet or anything. So none of us really knew what was going on, right? I mean, I know I didn't.
Yeah, they did such a good job with this, planning. I mean, we thought, in my mind, I thought this was, Hall and Nash coming from WWE, and I don't know, it was weird, it was bizarre, and it felt like, there was something going on between the two companies, like maybe Vince was secretly trying to take over. I mean, that's what it felt like to me, and that's what made it so compelling.
Yeah, and it blurred the reality. It blurred the lines between fiction and reality. And honestly, dude, that's when pro wrestling is at its best. When it makes you sit there, a bunch of grown men who sit there and everyone likes to think that they're so smart. I mean, we did too. Oh, well, I know how this works, and I know this, know that. But anything in a pro wrestling event or a storyline or whatever that can make you look at the guy beside you and go, dude, did that just really happen? How many times did we do that during the Monday Night Wars, man? And it reached its zenith with this. I mean, this was, as I said, I'm watching this stuff right now in replay, and man, it just felt 100% real. And dude, that's where WCW had the edge over WWE at that time.
Yeah, I mean, they had a good thing going. It was fresh and really, unique, and it was good. It was good for Hall and Nash. It was kind of like a new start for them, coming from WWE, as Diesel and Razor Ramon. I mean, they got to use their, names, their regular names. So it's like, I know they had the name for their tag team called the Outsiders, and that was cool. I liked the name.
Yeah.
It said it all, and it really felt like they were coming from outside, trying to get in and infiltrate WCW.
And actually, the logo they used for the Outsiders, the logo was actually taken from the book The Outsiders, which I know we all had to read in high school. But I remember they actually lifted the font and for the logo from that book. Because I remember the first time I saw the logo, I was like, that's actually the Outsiders logo from the book. Which, I'm a nerd, I would happen to know something that weird. But yeah, man, like you said, it legitimized them, and they were able to use they had to use the real names. I mean, it would have been silly at that time to call them anything else, because everyone knew who they were. But let's don't forget, man, they both had been in WCW before they became stars for Vince McMahon. They'd already previously been there.
Yeah, that's right. I remember, I believe it was with Diamond Dallas Page. He had a group, the Diamond, sort of like a Diamond Club or something.
I think it was the Diamond Mine. Ramon,
yeah. Something like that. Razor Ramon was the Diamond Stud, I believe, if I'm correct. And I don't remember Kevin Nash's gimmick at the time.
Oh, dude, how many did he have? First he was the Master Blaster. Then he was Vinny Vegas. Then he was Oz. I mean, talk about going through some crap gimmicks before you finally land on the one that makes you a star. I mean, you and I both know that Vince McMahon has had some crap ideas. WWE Creative has had some garbage ideas over the years. But, man, the whole Diesel thing for Nash was just on par. It was exactly what he needed. And by the time he and Scott Hall came back to WCW, like we said before, as top-rate main event superstars, man, their story had already been well told. And, had they just stayed a duo, had this thing not went anywhere else, I would say that they would have been the most powerful tag team in that company. They probably wouldn't have stayed a tag team for very long. They would have become, I don't know that Scott Hall would have been WCW champion, but I mean, obviously Nash was going to go in that direction. But the thing wasn't meant to stay just a duo, was it?
No, I mean, they came in and they propagated. Well, first of all, they built up this 6-man tag match against 3 of WCW's top stars, which I guess was Sting, Luger, and Macho Man.
Yes.
And they kept it, Hall and Nash for a while, and they said, they're going to have a mystery partner. Nobody knows who it is. It's like a big mystery. And that was part of the allure, And then when the pay-per-view, I believe it was Bash at the Beach, hit, I remember I was over at a friend's house watching. A friend I grew up with, we watched wrestling pay-per-views all the time. So, we kind of knew what was going on in wrestling. We knew what to expect sometimes, but this, no, we never expected anything like this at all. It was the biggest heel turn in wrestling, professional wrestling history, in my opinion. And, I remember watching the match, and it was just Hall and Nash it was like a handicap match for the most part.
Right.
And we were like, where's the third guy? He's supposed to be out there. And he was like, okay, well, we kept watching. And then I think Lex Luger ended up being injured and put out of the match. I can't remember exactly, and so it was like it became, kind of even then. And then I just remember Macho Man. He's laid out on the mat, and here comes Hulk Hogan, and the commentators are saying, like, oh yeah, the Hulkster's here to save the day, And I remember it's like, now what do you think?
But Bobby Heenan sat there and said the words, yeah, but whose side is he on? Did he know it was going to go down? I'm sure he knew. Why in the hell would you ruin the biggest surprise of all time by saying that? Looking back on it, yikes. You know what I'm saying? Like, what was he thinking?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I liked Bobby Heenan. I'm sure nobody in the company probably, wanted anybody to say anything about that. And Bobby Heenan kind of let it slip out just a tad right before it happened. And, shame on Bobby Heenan. I mean, yeah, may he rest in peace, of course, but, one of the greats of all time. But, it kind of maybe went over our heads. Me and my friend, we're still watching, and I didn't really see it coming until Hogan's, in the ring barking at Hall and Nash, and then all of a sudden I see him turn his back to them, and he goes against the far turnbuckle, and I'm like, what's he doing? I was like, no. Immediately I thought, no way, no. And he gives the big leg drop, and I was like, wow, it's Hogan.
And Hogan's never been the most athletically gifted man on the planet. I'm sure he'd probably tell you that too. But he seemed to hang in midair with that leg drop for an eternity, didn't he? He just seemed to hang there forever. Because you lost your breath. You're like, wait a minute, he's dropping the leg. Wait, what? Like, it just sort of frozen in time for me. I'll never forget how that felt the first time I saw it, man.
It's like it was almost like slow motion.
Yes.
One of those slow motion moments.
It's like, dude, it's like falling. Like if you've ever slipped, and I know you have, we all have done it, slipped and fell. In the middle of falling, you're falling. Like you are. But it happens so fast you can't seem to stop it. It's one of those surreal moments that you're like, okay, I'm on the ground. How did I get here? Oh, yeah, what just happened? That's kind of what I was going through watching that. I was like, wait a minute. He's in midair. Let me process this. And just as you try to think about it, boom, drops the leg. The crowd goes nuts. And, man, that ring filled full of trash. And that was a gimmick that lasted probably for the next 2 years. They kept filling the ring full of trash, man. It was crazy.
Yeah, I'd never seen that before. The fans were, throwing trash, filling the ring with trash, like you said. And, I remember somebody threw a drink, and it splattered on Hogan and Nash, I believe.
Right.
And I'd never seen that in wrestling before. So that, to me, it was like, wow, they're really getting over with the fans on this. The fans are really showing their hatred for them right now.
Oh, man, it worked, didn't it? I mean, like you said, it got over, and he legitimized them. As if Hall and Nash needed any more help to be legitimized in their roles as the outsiders and go on to something bigger and better. But, dude, Hogan was the catalyst for this thing to really get sparked. I mean, this was, Hall and Nash coming was, you lit the match, and Hogan making the turn was setting the woods on fire. I mean, that was... Wow. And the promos, you know, the black and white promos, the New World Order logo and all this other stuff. And Hogan christened the team the night he made the turn. He said, you can call this the New World Order of Wrestling. And funny factoid for you, of course, is the, and Nash has talked about this, that they were cutting these promos and doing the black and white filming and stuff. They did a bunch of them at like one time. And Hogan's cutting these pro wrestling promos. And Nash kept saying, dude, you can't do this. This is not who we are. We're not supposed to be slick pro wrestlers. We're supposed to be a gang who's not even supposed to have a camera crew with us. Supposedly we paid for this out of our pocket. So that's why the original nWo videos were choppy and pieced together. And they had a lot of cuts because they were cutting up Hogan's speech because they didn't want it to sound like, let me tell you something, dude, which is what it was sounding like because that's all Hogan had ever done. So, you know, it's funny how all of the quick editing and the piecing it together actually worked in their favor because it made it feel more like an underground guerrilla type of filming for their promos.
I remember the grainy black and white, cut promos, and I didn't know the story you just related about Kevin Nash, you know, what he said about, you know, Hogan, you know, he said, we can't do this. It was to their benefit the way it turned out because, you'd never seen promos like that before. So that, again, something new.
And, you know, fast forward, 30 years later, 25 years later, whatever it was, and you have the Shield. And it wasn't exactly the same thing, but it was three guys on their own. They had just took a camera, supposedly, I guess they just beat up a cameraman, took his camera, and then laid the camera down on the ground and just walked away. And again, it was one of those do-it-yourself, we're not supposed to be doing this, but here we are. You have to deal with this now because we're in your face kind of promos. So, you know, what the nWo did first, the Shield did later, and I thought it absolutely worked for sure.
Yeah, you definitely had to say that they borrowed from the nWo.
Oh, for sure. And let's be honest, man. What major heel factions did not borrow from the nWo? And dude, that's their influence that was felt for years, and even to this day, man, for years and years after the fact. I'm to the point right now. The documentary, July 29th, 1996, was the huge parking lot brawl. Of course, when they took Rey Mysterio and lawn darted him into the side of the trailer.
Oh yeah. Kevin Nash, I think Ray jumped at him from a height, and Kevin Nash just caught him, and it was like, okay, what's he gonna do? And then there's a tractor trailer right there, and Nash just takes him and drives him head first into it, and I'm like, man, that was wow. You know, they folded him up like an accordion.
And again, something you'd never really seen before. I mean, we had seen the Horsemen battle Dusty and the Risky Business Boys, as Tully called them at one point. Dusty and his guys. We saw those wars in the locker rooms, in the parking lot when they broke Dusty's hand in broad daylight. You know, we've seen this before, but not on this scale. And you know, it was so real. People around the Disney MGM Grand Studios, I guess, was where they were filming this. I could be wrong about the location, but the residents in the surrounding area called the cops because they thought it was actually a gang war happening in this parking lot. They thought it was legit. The cops showed up and they had to be told, no, we're filming TV. It's all good. It's a live pro wrestling show. But they had no way of knowing. So that just goes to show you how realistic, how real this thing got quick.
I'd heard that story, and it just drove home the point of how good this the story was put together and executed. So I mean, anytime you get that kind of reaction, at first you're like, whoa, wait a minute, we didn't, we're just, this is pro wrestling. But then again, you're like, in your head, you're thinking, this is what we want actually.
Oh man, you get, this is the kind of stuff that you dream about. I mean, when we started HVW back up, man, it was a matter of, we want this to feel real, and the social media aspect of it, want it to seem like the real deal, and get people invested, get fans invested in this, like they should be, like we want them to be. And man, to be able to just make this happen, dude, this is lightning in a bottle. And Dusty said it before, but this is living life at the end of a lightning bolt. That's what these guys were doing, and it was absolutely fantastic. I mean, everything you can imagine a faction could be, and much, much more than that. Just crazy. We can't forget about the fact that, this thing really caught fire, again, as we said, with Hogan. Hogan becomes Hollywood Hogan, makes the duo a trio. But then it started to get really serious when we all found out together that Eric Bischoff was the brains behind the faction. A big deal, man. Talk about that.
Yeah, that, again, another big surprise, which didn't see coming. I remember you making the comment after it was revealed that Bischoff was the mastermind behind it all. I remember you making a comment saying, like, well, that's how they explain how the nWo was able to come in and have, such immediate success. It was an inside job. They had the executive, the guy that was running WCW was, he was going against the company and helping these outsiders come in and, just run roughshod, like you said.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And from a storyline perspective, it makes the most sense. How could these three guys, even though Hogan's a legend at this point, Nash is on his way to becoming a legend, you'd have to say, Hall is one of the most popular guys around, maybe ever. How else would these three guys just be able to come in and do the things they did? Well, because, like you said, it's a guy on the inside, and it's the guy on the inside. This is, I don't know what you compare this to. This is, I don't know, man. This is crazy. This is like, the mob has the most decorated cop on their payroll in the police department. That's what this is. Like, just at the last second, that the big turning point of the movies, you find out, the detective Elliot Ness is actually on Al Capone's side. What? Imagine that twist. So yeah, that would have been huge, but they pulled it off. And Bischoff, smarmy, cocky, a jerk, arrogant, all the above. And he's those things in real life to a certain degree. You probably have to say, just judging by interviews, folks. That's all we're doing. But yeah, man, it served him well. He played his character to the hilt and played it expertly, I have to say, because, man, I think pretty much everybody hated his guts. They, as popular as the faction was, they could hate him all day long. But again, it just made so much sense at the time. And with him on their side, and they made this point on TV, because Scott Hall called him Eazy-E, right?
That's right.
Like with Eazy-E on our side, we can't fail. This thing's in the bag. And then the narrative went from, it's a hostile takeover and we're here to cause trouble. It went from that to, hey, let's, we're going to start holding pay-per-views, NWO pay-per-views, and we're going to rechristen the title. Hogan spray painted it with the NWO logo after he defeated the Giant / Big Show. They tried to change the face of WCW, and man, they did a pretty good job of it.
Yeah, the transformation, it was almost like nWo was becoming its own brand,
right.
Separate brand,
right?
Like a separate entity. And Bischoff, that again, that was unique because when he had come to WCW in that role years before, he was well-spoken, mild-mannered. Pretty much kind of like Vince McMahon was before Vince McMahon turned to evil Mr. McMahon. He was a good guy, likable guy. He always, in a way, I don't want to say he was not objective, but, in a way he kind of pulled for the babies in wrestling.
Right,
I remember, I think Hogan had a match and Flair came in up from behind and Bischoff was like, Hogan, get out of there, and then it was too late. Flair raked the eyes and just did a number on Hogan after that. But, yeah, again, this further legitimized the nWo in their hostile takeover. Hogan was the world, but, Bischoff, just pushed it even further.
Absolutely. And we can't neglect to mention that as we go through this story here, the group began to grow. They went from a trio to a quartet because Ted DiBiase joined. He was not an active pro wrestler at that point. He was just a manager / figurehead / partner, I guess, in the criminal enterprise known as the New World Order. But number 5 was the Giant / Big Show. Number 6 was kind of a toss-up, but we'll get there in a second. The man formerly known as the Lightning Kid in WWE, who's part of the Clique, and if anybody's a wrestling fan knows the Clique, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Shawn Michaels, and Scott Waltman, also known as the 1-2-3 Kid, Lightning Kid. So in WCW, he becomes 6 because he's technically the 6th member, SYXX, who later becomes 6-Pac, who would later go on to become X-Pac in WWE. Lots of name changes, man. What are you going to do? But he fit.
Yeah, and,
I mean, you have to say that he fit the group totally.
oh, without a doubt. I mean, he was in that clique with Hall, Nash and Shawn Michaels, and eventually Triple H when he, went up north. He was, I mean, they were all good buddies, no doubt. But, I mean, and of course you had to give props to Razor Ramon, well, Scott Hall as Razor Ramon, for putting X-Pac, whatever you want to call him, at the time, 1-2-3 Kid over in the WWE and getting him, broke into the business. I thought that was really cool of Scott Hall.
Put him on the map for sure. And I mean, that's the way the business should be done, man. It's too many times we've seen men and women in this business not get a break, not get their shot for whatever reason. People say Kid was too small. It's like, have you seen what they're doing in WCW with the cruiserweight division? What do you mean he's too small? So he managed to turn heads, and that was the good thing to do, because Scott Waltman continues to be one of the smartest guys in the business. Despite what anyone says about him or his checkered past or what have you, he's one of the smartest guys to ever work in the business, and he would definitely be an asset in whatever locker room he's in. But again, he's the 6th member, and this is where it starts to get very interesting, because the NWO lasted for a good long time, pretty much unopposed. And I want to lead to the guy. I got to lead to the guy in the paint. I want to get there. But there's a few things I feel like we need to cover first. First of all, WCW, formerly known when it was run by the National Wrestling Alliance, was Ric Flair country. It was Jim Crockett country. It was the stomping grounds, the Four Horsemen. The Four Horsemen reorganized a few different times. By the time all this came around, the Horsemen were sort of in a state of flux. They reorganized and got some new members on board. But man, how many times did we see the NWO beat down Flair and the Horsemen? And, at the time, I just remember watching these shows because, and that usually we would watch every Monday. There was you and me and a whole gang of us in a great big living room somewhere. And we would flip back and forth between Monday Night Raw and WWE.
Nitro.
I'm sorry, Nitro. Excuse me, WCW Nitro. Boy, what a different world that would have been, huh? So that's an Elseworld scenario right there, folks. So WCW Nitro, Monday Nitro, and WWE Monday Night Raw, and just flipping back and forth between the two, or on the TV, flipping back and forth between the two channels. But how many times did we see Flair and the Horsemen jumped? And at a certain point, we start looking at each other going, dude, that's Ric Flair. What are you doing? I mean, it became painfully obvious that this thing was starting to get just a little bit out of control.
Yeah, they overdid it just a bit. I mean, I understand, in at the beginning, of course, you have to have these guys, take over and beat down the guys in WCW. But, too many times, it becomes like, well, okay, well, we've seen this before. It's getting kind of old. We looked forward, eagerly looked forward to Monday Night Wrestling because you had a choice. I mean, if one show wasn't, doing that well, you could flip over to the other one and check out what was going on there. Maybe it was a better show and vice versa. So, I mean, Monday nights were, I always look forward to it. I was like, all right, it's Monday night. It felt kind of like a holiday or something, Christmas maybe.
Oh, yeah, and always getting quality. And I was actually thinking about this past Wednesday night, watching AEW Dynamite live, and then had actually DVR'd NXT. And it occurred to me after watching both shows, I was like, man, there's some good pro wrestling on TV right now. And that's what we had at the time with the Monday Night Wars. And anytime there's a war between two rival pro wrestling companies, this benefits the fans at the end of the day. It benefits the fans, which is a great, great thing. But yeah, man, we're watching this, and I just remember us seeing Flair getting beat down for the nth time, and I'm like, how many more times is this guy just think about what this could have been. As big as NWO was, as huge as it got over, the whole nine. Just imagine if Flair and the Horsemen had been built up to that level to be the NWO's chief competitors, their number one rivals. And it would have been perfect poetry because you would have had Hogan on one side and Flair on the other, just like fans have been dreaming about for years. And we could have finally have had the feud to end all feuds. Hogan and his guys versus Flair and his guys. It would have been, Hogan and his WWE guys versus Flair and his WCW guys. And it would have been perfect. But instead, they just became cannon fodder for the New World Order.
Honestly, I've never thought about that scenario, but now hearing it, you say it out loud, wow, what could have been? That would have been so much better. Maybe we can get in a time machine and go back and maybe get in a Bischoff's ear or somebody's ear in WCW, and slip them that little hint. But yeah, I mean that would have been awesome. Flair and the Four Horsemen versus Hogan and the NWO, two biggest names in wrestling for a couple of decades, maybe longer. Each man in his group going head to head, and it like Scott Hall said, you want a war, you're going to get one. That would have been it.
Oh, for sure. And dude, you can't tell me the crowd wouldn't have ate that up, man, because Flair was still popping the audience. Remember the night he came back and they reformed the Horsemen in the middle of the ring with the tuxes on? Dude, he got the most massive pop. And he got it every time. He gets it now. Like, how in the world do you not see that there's money to be made? But, it's easy for us to play armchair quarterback. You've got to remember, folks, the environment at the time. Bischoff and Flair weren't exactly, drinking buddies or anything. And they had a lot of problems, a lot of issues between the two. That thing skyrocketed. It got progressively worse as the years went on, to the point that Flair was so unsure of himself, he didn't even know which way was up, which way was down, what was left, what was right. I mean, there's a whole other podcast on just Ric Flair, folks. He's, for all the stuff that he went through in that company, especially under Bischoff's leadership, unreal. But yeah, opportunities missed. But dude, we got to lead to the guy. I've been wanting to get to the guy. Might as well get to the guy. We're talking about the guy in the paint. Mr. WCW. Mr. Loyalty. Loyal to the bitter end. Wrestled the last episode of Nitro against Flair. The one and only Sting. Dude, talk about Sting's transformation. First of all, set the table. What in the world caused Sting to ditch the colors and go with the black?
Of course, the movie The Crow, based on the comic, that was the perfect gimmick for him at the time to, rise up again and become the ultimate foe for the NWO. I mean, it was over huge. The fans, everybody loved it. Yeah. How many times did you anticipate Sting coming down from the rafters, on the zip cord to thwart the NWO? These guys, they thought they had everything under control, and then suddenly, here comes Sting, rejuvenated. Of course, this rejuvenated his career. I think at the time, wasn't that the first time he put on the black and white?
The first time he did it, and I'm pretty sure this is right, was the night that he came in and he gave the Scorpion Death Drop to somebody. I forget who it was, but he's in the ring and he's giving that speech. His whole face wasn't painted. He still had the signature outline of the Sting face painting, except this time it was in white. And he had the black duster on, and he gave the infamous line, "The only thing for sure about Sting is nothing's for sure." And that was the last thing he said for over a year. He didn't speak again on TV. He took to the rafters. He suddenly started painting his entire face like the Crow. He started growing his hair out. He hardly ever interfered. He hardly ever came down. Eventually, you would see, I guess it was a crow or a raven that was perched on his arm. Sometimes you would see that. But most of the time, he was either way, way, way up in the nosebleed section by himself, or he was up on the rafters just watching and never got involved. But I remember, because there was all these questions, because initially what did it was supposedly people were questioning, well, who's going to be the next guy to join NWO? Everyone's joining. Everyone's betraying WCW. I wonder if Sting will do it too. And Sting's character perfectly was like, excuse me? I've been loyal to this company for years, and you're going to question where my loyalty is? It was perfect. And it, again, dude, lightning in a bottle. Perfect timing all the way around. Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you. So forever, we didn't know what was going on. Remember, we debated it. We talked about it. Well, is he going to join? No, he looks too cool. He's got to be a face. And then that night, when the Big Show is the Giant's getting laid out. He'd already turned on the nWo. He might have been the first guy to turn on it, if I'm not mistaken. But he's getting laid out by the group. And remember, here comes Sting. He walked down from around where the side entrance is. He didn't swing down. He came down, walked into the ring, and he had touched, I can't remember if he had made physical contact with Hogan or if he had already dropped Bischoff. He had done something. But remember, he took on the entire nWo by himself and even dropped the bat outside the ring before he did. So I got cold chills right now. Dude, I will never. There's very few moments in this business that, well, I can't say very few. There's very few that made this mark on me. One was the night that Nikita turned babyface and joined Dusty Rhodes in the cage against Ole Anderson and J.J. Dillon. But this night, I will never forget that. And in my mind, they're equal. They're in terms of fan response. He took them all out. Talk about that, dude.
That was probably the biggest moment in the whole nWo takeover. So here comes Sting, loyal to the company, and he's going to stand up and lead the charge against the nWo. And he ignited everybody else, in my opinion. Everybody else kind of gathered around Sting, and the battle lines were drawn. So it was kind of like the scenario you were talking about with the Four Horsemen. I think Sting, just one guy, made a difference.
Oh yeah, and dude, he took them all on. It was like an action film. We've seen that kind of thing over the years. We saw Austin do it when Austin came in that night. He supposedly was in the bar drinking, and he came back to destroy the invasion team of WCW/ECW. I remember that. He came back and one by one, and people were going nuts, going, oh my God, this is great. This is awesome. I'm like, dude, Sting did this years ago. This is nothing I haven't seen. But yeah, man, it was, dude, I'll never forget that night. That's etched in my mind for all time. Just what an amazing moment. And like you said, perfectly, it rejuvenated Sting's career. It put him back on the map. And people talk about, oh, dude, there's nothing like the classic Sting, man. He's iconic with the spike haircut and the bright neon. I'm like, dude, shut up. Most of the time that comes from cats who were little kids during that time. Dude, that was not me. We were not little kids during the WCW era right before the nWo. So I don't hold Sting in that regard and that character. To me, it's the Crow for sure.
Oh yeah, the same with me. That's my Sting. That's always going to be how I remember Sting, because he had the biggest impact against the nWo, and I mean, he just exploded on them, and we all went crazy. We were like, this is the kind of things you watch for, why you watch. This is it.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. This is why we watch. Just fantastic. Just awesome stuff. So we talked about the Click connection with Shawn Michaels and Triple H, of course. WWE had D-Generation X. WCW had the nWo. And we had talked a long time about what would happen if certain people jumped ship. What if they went back and forth? And honestly, we thought for a long time Shawn Michaels was on his way out. Now, at the time, you go back and see interviews now, I don't know that it ever got serious. I don't know that he even had a phone call with Bischoff. I don't know that he ever did. But in our minds at the time, it was, it's only a matter of time now. He's going to be there. Remember? I mean, it was all we could talk about was Shawn Michaels joining the nWo. Man, what an amazing... would that have been it? I mean, how does WWE rebound after that? I mean, can you imagine?
Yeah, that might have been the nail in the coffin right there. And also, I think you might remember this. One night, Shawn Michaels came out on Raw, and might have just been, to talk on the mic or something. But yeah, he definitely wasn't in ring gear. He was in street clothes. And as he steps through the ropes, he gives the Wolfpack sign,
right?
Or the NWO sign.
Right.
And that, we was like, oh, I remember you saying something like that. He's giving a signal to his buddies Nash and Scott Hall. I was like, cool.
Yeah, and then Nash answered him. He answered him on Nitro. He comes down to the ring and he gets in the camera and says, "Right back at you, HBK." I mean, that was huge. And
I'd forgotten about that. I remember it now. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, dude, and it was just there again. It just takes you back to the point of this was the best time for fans. One of the best times for fans was the Monday Night Wars, because you got to see so many, like you said, so many cool things that you never thought you'd see. Two companies talking to each other, whether it was directly or indirectly, on national television, live national television. That's insane. But, dude, it worked. It got over. And, yeah, I think HBK joining the NWO would have been huge. But I don't know that they needed him. The thing was getting over huge. They seemed to be doing just fine. They were killing WCW in the ratings, man. They beat they beat WWE in the ratings 83 consecutive weeks. What a record. What a run.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, actually, let's jump a little ahead. I remember when WCW acquired the services of Bret Hart. He came in,
right.
And it was like, wow, Bret Hart's in WCW. That's something else you thought you'd never see.
True.
I remember after, I think it was a pay-per-view. It was his first pay-per-view, I believe. And the NWO was still alive after that. I remember you saying that should have been the end of the NWO with Bret Hart coming in, and he should have, ended it. And to this day, I had to agree with that. I mean, I just wonder how things might have been had they done that.
And, I predicted that a couple of different times. I said that when Sting beat Hogan for the WCW Championship, that was the end. I thought it would have been the perfect end. I thought that on the following Monday Nitro, you bring the group out together. Hogan's pissed off. They're all mad at each other for letting this happen. And suddenly Nash looks at Hogan and says, "What happened?" Hogan says, "Brother, where were you?" And Nash says, "Look, we can't fight your battles for you. What's going on?" Next thing you know, the group splinters. You still keep the NWO. You still keep the guys on the roster. But all of a sudden, instead of them taking over, it's massive, massive infighting. They're turning on each other. There's storylines there for years to come if you play it right. But they didn't do it. They took the belt off Sting the next Monday. Something about, it was a fast count or whatever it was they said. Years later, Bischoff claims that Sting's head was not in the game on the night of the title change. Don't know what the story is there for real or for not or whatever. But, dude, the fans wanted this. This should have been the end. But it wasn't, and it's whatever. But then with Bret, maybe that should have been the end. But it wasn't, so whatever. And then we thought, and here's the next guy for you, Goldberg. We thought, well, look, he's the guy. He's the next guy. He could possibly be their Undertaker, right? And it didn't end with him either. I remember us watching Goldberg when the so-called streak began. And I don't know how many of our little clique actually saw, okay, this guy's going to be a megastar, man. He's going to be huge. I don't know how many of us actually believe that or not. But, man, you couldn't deny his athleticism. And I was never a college football guy, so I didn't know Bill's background. But fans who did know him recognized him. So what did you see when you first saw him start tearing through jobbers, for lack of a better term? What did you think about this guy?
Well, I mean, the physique was there. He had an amazing physique. He had the body, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
But I never saw him, rising to the top that quickly. I mean, again, that surprised me. That was another surprise. It turned out to be a good surprise, though. But, yeah, I vaguely remember the first time I saw his first, one of his first matches. And, he's just a guy in trunks and boots, nothing I mean, he's got a great physique, but, it seems like nothing special about him. But, yeah, after they started counting the undefeated streak, and, when something like that starts happening, you think, well, eventually he's going to drop one, But, it kept going, and it was like, wow, they're really pushing him. So he's the next anti-NWO guy. And so, yeah, I remember finally they built him up, and he got a shot at Hogan for the world title. And I remember all of us getting together for that night. I believe it was Nitro.
Right.
Yeah, and some of our friends made a crazy, silly pact, which I can't believe they went through with it. They wore underwear which was spray painted black,
Right.
in honor of Goldberg, his title shot. And I remember you and I thinking, like, that's taking it a little too far, don't you think, guys? But
I remember they tried to talk us into it. And, man, if somebody walked in the room when this happened, they would have thought, what the hell kind of party is this anyway?
Yeah. It's like, you can just imagine a person walking in, seeing that, and just turning right back around, walking out, like, oh.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, we were pumped to the hilt for that match. And I got to be honest, I didn't know if Hogan was going to, give Goldberg the title. I don't know if he was going to, give him the push or what, because with Hogan's past, we knew, that sometimes he didn't put a guy over. He was reluctant, because, I mean, again, wrestlers, they have egos sometimes, and sometimes their egos get, bigger than the business. And we weren't sure how it was going to turn out, but I remember when Goldberg, I think he speared him and then got him up for the jackhammer, and I was thinking, well, there's no way he's got to win it. Yeah.
Absolutely. July 6, 1998 is what the night we're talking about. Nitro in the George Dome in Atlanta. Over 40,000 fans in attendance that night. Live TV, free TV, and not pay-per-view, folks, okay? And I would say they probably got their biggest rating to date, probably ever in the history of that show. But just insane. Goldberg went in with an undefeated streak of 170-something. It ended up being 173. Eventually, because WCW got really good at this. This night could have been the night that it ended for real. Again, the next week on Nitro, it could have been, what happened? Well, let me tell you something, brother. And the next thing you know, it's a Donnybrook, Katie bar the doors, chaos ensues. This thing has gone to hell. But nope, they didn't do that. He eventually lost the title to Kevin Nash, and they lied, cheated, and stole to beat him. Gave him his first loss, and the streak was over. So once again, WCW doing great things, takes the gun, aims it at their own foot, pulls trigger. So, this becomes a running theme, folks. If you're taking notes and keeping score at home, this is the third time they've done something really, really odd and perhaps a little dumb. So, again, we're armchair quarterbacking here, but what can you say?
I mean, yeah, kind of like the cliche, take one step forward and two steps back. I believe WCW was, like you said, they became notorious for that. I mean, they would do something really spectacular, and then, they wouldn't follow through with it like they should have. And, Goldberg eventually losing to Kevin Nash, who at the time was baby. I think he was with the NWO Red and Black.
The Wolfpack, I believe. Yeah, he was, because this led to the big thing after. Remember when he won the belt? What did he do after that?
Oh, yeah. I was really disgusted with this. He supposedly has a match with Hogan. Hogan's still black and white. They've split into factions, or two separate factions. And they're in the ring standing, eye to eye, nose to nose. Look like they're, going to tear each other apart. And suddenly Hogan reaches out his pointer finger, touches Nash. Nash, falls down. Hogan gets on top of him, 1, 2, 3, and we're like, what? Come on, man.
You're right. Yeah, it was. There again, kids, keep score. This is another moment, and by this point, we saw this, and are you kidding me right now? Just the most nonsensical booking you've ever seen. They put the entire thing back together again. Suddenly they're all bros and buddies and pals again and all this stuff. And if you can't tell by now, ladies and gentlemen. This is the part of the show where suddenly it all begins to go south. You've got Scott Hall's drinking problems being brought to light. Stop me if you've heard this one. You've got Scott Hall's drinking problems being brought to light. You've got Dennis Rodman and Karl Malone. You've got Jay Leno. You've got all this. You've got Road Wild. You've got WCW sold out. You've got, where do I stop? This thing begins to get not little out of control. We passed little out of control a year before this. I mean, this thing has gotten absolutely insane. But for me, one of the most telling moments, because I love Rodman. I'm a Bulls guy. Always have been, always will be, especially when it comes to Michael. But because I love that team. So I love Rodman. But for me, one of the things that did it is the guy we were just talking about. Sting joins the Wolfpack. Like, dude, you can't say it wasn't cool. You know it was cool. I know it was cool. It seemed cool at the time. We loved it. He looked great, right? He had the red. Yeah. He had the red and black. Everything was awesome. But dude, you put the logo on Sting. So basically, you had him do what he refused to do to begin with, and that's join the enemy.
Yeah, even though it was a babyface faction, side of the enemy. I mean, still, he went against his code, if you will, morals. And I mean, Sting is not that. He's not that kind of guy. It's kind of like Ricky Steamboat, who was the consummate baby throughout his career. And, I mean, you couldn't – I don't think it would have worked any time Steamboat trying to be heel. I mean, maybe they could have tried it, but, I just wouldn't have bought it. But, yeah, Sting, I don't know, it just didn't – something didn't seem right there. It was out of place, I thought.
And, not for nothing, but, every Monday it turned out, well, who's going to get a T-shirt? Let's hand out a T-shirt. Hey, who wants a T-shirt? It's going to be a new member, right? And as if it wasn't enough, Dusty Rhodes, the late great, one of a kind, there'll never be another, Dusty Rhodes joins the nWo. And at that point, the thing had gotten way out of hand, and it was, in my opinion, past the point of no return. It just got to be insane. And they were just basically what had begun as a trio, and a highly successful trio at that. This thing turned into a monstrosity. Instead of one limo, there was 10 limos showing up. I mean, legit. Not a work, brother. A legit 10 limos showing up with all these nWo guys at these arenas. And you're like, okay, this is starting to get, yeah, forget it. This thing's gone. This thing has gone so far off the rails. It crashed outside of town and the whole train's on fire. This thing is, holy cow, dude. Unreal.
Yeah, you just made a comment about, the multiple limos pulling up, and it made me think of the beginning scene of Spaceballs, or, the beginning of Spaceballs, the Imperial. The ship comes into the picture and it keeps going and going, and you're like sitting there thinking, how big is this thing?
Right. Spaceball 1. And it takes forever. Yeah. And at the finally, you see the back of it, it says, "We break for nobody." Right? Yeah.
I remember Triple H, he and Shawn Michaels, I think it was DX, still the original DX, one night on Raw, talking about, he was referring to WCW, but of course he didn't say WCW. He referred to it as that cesspool down south, and I thought to myself, you know what? He's got a point. I mean, it's getting too many guys into this group. I mean, it was cool when it was a trio, and then 4, 5, maybe, and even 6. I didn't have a problem with it then, but after that, it got out of control, like you said. I mean, way out of control.
Yeah, it was just too much to look at. It's too much. Too much of anything's never a good thing. So it was just way too much. It was like just too much to take in, too much to buy, too much to believe. The thing had just gotten, I'm sorry I keep going back to that phrase, but going out of control is the only thing I just keep coming back to that. It was just insane. And let's not forget to mention that some other guys were left out of this, not out of the group, but kind of steamrolled, just as much as Flair and the Horsemen were. Guys like Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, Chris Jericho, and many others who just were kind of left by the wayside and weren't allowed to have anything because the NWO took everything over. They just absolutely, hostile takeover, you better believe it, man. That's exactly what it was.
And kudos to those guys who eventually, said, well, screw it. I'm out of here. I'm going up north. And, I'm gonna see if I can make my star shine up there, and they did. Jericho was one of the first, maybe the first, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. I think Raven left first because there was that infamous meeting in the locker room where Bischoff stood there and supposedly said, "Look, anybody that doesn't like what we're doing, you're free to leave." So Raven got his bag and split because he's like, "I don't have to do this anymore. This sucks." So he got out. But yeah, to your point, Jericho left. The team known as the Radicals in WWE, they left. All three of those guys split for much greener pastures. I mean, Booker T stayed till the end. And we don't, Booker T will be another topic for another time, but he stayed till the end. But yeah, man, it was just, now listen, I'm sitting here bagging on this group. First we praise them. Now we're dumping on them. But let's don't forget that the group did do a lot of good in terms of giving some guys spotlight that they never really had before. They took Marcus Alexander Bagwell, who was just a pretty boy babyface trained by Sting, and American Males, worst song ever. And
yeah, I agree.
And they made him Buff Bagwell, completely turned him around. Scott Steiner, who was an amateur wrestling champion, one of the best, a legit tough guy. Brother, if Scott Steiner got mad at you, man, you were going to feel it for a week if you felt anything when you woke up. Do you know what I mean? He became Big Papa Pump. So yeah, there was several different guys that got a new lease on life because of the NWO and got gimmicks they ran with for years after WCW shut its doors. So again, yeah, we're going to criticize, but man, it's you can't say that nothing positive didn't come from this for sure.
Oh yeah, I didn't have a problem with Buff Bagwell and Papa Pump being in the group. I thought they actually brought something to the table. With Hall and Nash, Hogan, and whoever else. But it really took those guys to new heights, like you said. And, from then on, I mean, their careers could only, go up.
Oh, yeah. Sorry for getting quiet, but I just watched The Finger Poke of Doom for the first time in years. And, holy cow, man. Insane. Just
yeah.
Crazy.
On that point, I remember reading somebody's comment online. It might have been a guy that was writing for wrestling at the time. Yeah, he just made a big joke about it. He said Hogan had went on a brief hiatus, traveled around the world, and that's where, and he must have learned the finger of death in Tibet or something, And I was like, I got a chuckle out of that.
That's pretty good, man. I had to say I like that. It's terrible. It's freaking awful, but I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, that to me sort of solidified where this thing had gone. And, just like the Horsemen, where the NWA/WCW later on tried to recreate the magic, they tried to recreate this thing a number of times. Let's get to the stats, because I know you can't wait to hear this, brother, because trust me, when I read it, I was shocked. The group officially ran from 1996 to the year 2000. Get ready. 62 members.
Really? No way.
Yeah, way. Terrible.
I was not aware.
Yeah, dude. 3 different companies. WCW, New Japan, and WWE. Here's the factions. Some of these you may not even know. There's the original NWO. There's NWO Wolfpack. NWO Hollywood. NWO Elite. NWO Black and White. NWO 2000, and NWO Japan. There was also a WWE version, which we can talk about if you want to, but let's face it, it wasn't exactly the NWO anymore. This was Vince McMahon behind the steering wheel in the driver's seat and calling the shots. This was not WCW falling apart from the top down. Of course, we know the story. 2001, Vince McMahon has bought the company. WCW is over. NWO is a thing of the past until he brings the original trio, back together and relaunches the NWO gimmick. Also would be remiss if we didn't mention Hall and Nash going to TNA and starting what they referred to as the band, because obviously they couldn't use the NWO trademark in TNA. So this thing has continued over the years. And if I can rewind just for a sec to the end of the group's run in WCW, Jeff Jarrett, dude, the whole Slapnuts thing, I've been trying to put this behind me for years, man.
Oh, yeah. I mean, as if all those other guys joining wasn't enough. Okay, let's go with Jeff Jarrett, and let's call him Old Slapnuts. I mean, yeah, yeah. I couldn't believe it. I was like, really? I mean, you're gonna put a wrestler on TV. I mean, and Jeff Jarrett up to that point, I mean, he was, I mean, okay, I guess, but yeah, this was more ridiculous than his gimmick in WWE when he was there before. Yeah, who came up with that one? I mean, how did you think that was gonna, go over? I mean, that was a joke.
Dude, I love how you're fumbling for words like you have forgotten where you are. I just imagine you being in a parking lot, can't find your car, going, I don't understand where it's at. Like that's how you sound right now. Because the whole thing is, yeah.
Yeah, wandering around in the dark looking for the light switch. I remember you making that metaphor one time. They couldn't find the light switch.
Right. Oh, my God. Well, I can tell you this, folks. If there was a light switch to be turned on, Jeff Jarrett was not it. So, yeah, just imagine. And, like, he was the WCW champion. They gave him the belt because Vince Russo had a mat on for him. Just loved this guy. They loved each other, right? And I'm thinking, dude, you want to be the captain of a sinking ship? Is that what you want? Guess what? You're now captain. Congratulations. And then the ship's going down. Well, who cares at that point?
Yeah. Another thing that stuck in my memory, I just happened to see this when it was really going south. They tried to put it back together again, the band back together again, as Scott Hall would say. And this time they had Bret Hart and Jeff Jarrett in the NWO with Hall and Nash. And I remember they did it at the that small studio in Florida. I guess it was MGM or whatever.
Right.
That just, to me, doing it right there, that just told me, it was like, wow, you really don't expect much out of this. This is like a desperation move, big desperation move. And I remember when they made Jeff Jarrett and Bret Hart part of the NWO, I was like, man, come on. Yeah, I was like, this is the last straw. I'm turning it off.
I mean, dude, at that point, I think we'd pretty well made the decision. Stone Cold Steve Austin was the biggest human being on the planet in our eyes. You didn't get any bigger, better than Austin. The Rock was quickly becoming his number two. You had the Attitude Era in full swing. WWE was completely on fire at that point. Austin caught more fire than NWO had ever had, in my humble estimation. And, I mean, hottest act ever was Stone Cold. And, it's amazing that one guy, not Vince McMahon, but Austin, it took one guy to take down that huge inflated roster of egos, of personalities, of questionable booking, of overdone storylines, of angles that fans got tired of, wrestlers got tired of, wrestlers walked out because of it. And one guy who WCW had fired, Eric Bischoff had fired, in my opinion, brought the whole thing down.
So, yeah, just to follow up on that, we kept expecting a guy currently with the company to, end the NWO, but we never thought it would be, a guy that was once there who was fired, working for the other company that would take them down,
right,
single-handedly. Yeah, it's just like poetic justice, really.
Oh, I was getting ready to say that. That's perfect. Absolutely perfect, man. Yeah, no doubt about it. It took the guy that no one thought would, like you said, I can't even put it to words, but you said it perfectly. I'm not going to rephrase it. But yeah, it was him. It was Austin. Absolutely. But let's face it, folks, WCW by this point had done a lot of more damage than maybe Vince could do or anyone else could do at that point. I'm not saying it was irretrievable or irreparable, but dude, it was pretty well close. And again, catching lightning in a bottle is hard enough. Try catching it twice in the same company. It's not impossible. But dude, good luck. Because as evidenced by the fact that WWE has not recreated a tenth of what Austin brought to the table yet. Not yet. And they've tried a lot of times. But every time they think they have it, they blow it because they make mistakes WCW made, or it's just not there and it's not meant to work out. But I'll tell you this, and usually we don't end a show on a down note, so I don't want to start now. But dude, it's hard. Just look back at the arenas that WCW was selling out and all the money that company was making, guaranteed contracts and all these big names, and NWO was riding high. And they managed to fizzle the whole thing out. And it's mind-boggling to me how we talked about a company that was on top of the business, dude. No doubt. No question. And again, in my opinion, shot themselves square in the foot, man. Blew the foot clean off in the end. Crazy.
Yeah, not only, I mean, like you said, they took themselves down from within, but at the same time, of course, Austin, he had a lot to do with it. People were, changing the channel, going over to Raw, and they were staying there and not looking back. And, I'm going back to the beginning, the NWO, I'm glad they did it. And, I would watch it again, if it was, say, I got amnesia or something and they did it again. I would watch it again, of course. But, I would hope that they would make better decisions this time. Maybe not, of course, not bring as many guys in and not have it last so long. Just make better decisions this time.
And, they had the cinematic match with John Cena against Bray Wyatt. And Cena comes out as former versions of himself. And at one point he comes out wearing the NWO shirt with NWO hat to the music and the black and white intro. And just for a brief moment in time, he gave fans something they'd been talking about for years. John Cena should turn heel and reform the NWO. And, of course it's not going to happen. But think about this. WWE owns that trademark. They own that logo. They could pull the trigger anytime they wanted to. I would never say never, ever in this business. Because, man, if you do, you're fooling yourself. I think it's only a matter of time until they feel they have somebody that could pull this off and they actually redo this thing from the ground up. I would not be shocked in the slightest.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like you said, never say never, and that goes in in general in life too, because as soon as you do, I mean, that it could happen. Yeah, I mean, like you said, Vince owns the copyrights to all of it, so he can do with it whatever he wants to. I mean, maybe at the right time, who knows.
And we can't wrap up a conversation about the NWO without talking about their legacy. We talked about the Shield. We have to talk about the Nexus, who brought that gang mentality. That whole gimmick was the gang mentality back to professional wrestling. There's been other factions over the years that remind you the very nostalgic feeling, very, very mindful and very similar to the NWO. But of course, the number one gimmick is the Bullet Club. Started in New Japan by Fergal Devitt, who's now known by his working name of Finn Balor in WWE. I mean, he's the one that started the whole thing with Carl Anderson, and also with Bad Luck Fale in New Japan Pro Wrestling. They started the whole thing, called the Bullet Club. They wanted to be number one. They were heavily inspired by the NWO. They started doing the Wolfpack signs, which is something now that WWE has actually snapped back on them and stopped them from using Wolfpack signs with their hands, for God's sake. I mean, dude, at what point do you take the foot off the pedal just at least a little bit? Vince McMahon's answer, never, pal. That's when. So.
Everything is controlled.
Absolutely. Got to make $1 off everything, dude, for sure. But the Bullet Club's still going strong. It's still going. And at any given time, they were the largest thing in the business, and then maybe not so large. But yeah, man, the Bullet Club's still going strong. It produced Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, or at least when they joined the club, it put them on the map even more than before. The same with Cody and Heyman Adam Page, the villain Marty Scurll, who later went on to Ring of Honor. And again, the NWO was not necessarily about creating stars. It was about taking established stars and sort of recreating them, but introduced some other stars at the same time. But at the end of the day, I can't say the NWO killed WCW because there's a lot of factors, as we've said before, a lot of other things that went into that happening. So you can't lay the blame at that gimmick's door. I don't think that's the right thing to do. With the Bullet Club New Japan, it has actually created stars. It's gotten guys together. And again, it's all done out of respect. I don't think anyone in that company has ever looked at this and said, well, screw it. We're gonna upset the legacy of the NWO, and by God, this will be our NWO. I don't think it's like that. I think this was all done out of respect, and as evidenced by the fact that when Gallows and Anderson went to WWE with AJ Styles, the original club, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more, say no more. So, yeah, man. But again, dude, legacy, and You know, we talk about the Horsemen, and we remember the Horsemen for a lot different reasons than we remember NWO. The NWO, and unfortunately for the gimmick, has a lot of negative connotations. Again, ego, money, fame, glory, power, swagger, control, has to be main event, led by one of the most notorious narcissists of all time. They've got again control, and they're riding high, and that is whether you're a fan or not, depending on how you look at what your frame of reference is, it's good or bad. It's a good or a bad thing for the legacy of the NWO. I mean, as much fun things that came out of those times, there's a lot of stuff that came out of that today you just shake your head at and say, man, if only this and if only that.
Yeah, I guess we'll never know. I mean, we can only look back and say, what might have been.
No doubt about it. And we've done that a lot during the course of this show. So I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'm going to get your final thoughts. Give me something good, man. If you had to give your last word, your final thoughts on the NWO, what you got for me?
Like I said, it was a great time in wrestling for all wrestling fans everywhere. And, I'm thankful that it happened. I would have much rather have had it happened than not had it happened, because, I mean, it was really fresh and, new in the beginning. That being said, I think, there's also a negative side. I mean, they brought too many guys into the group, and it just got a little ridiculous, over the top. But I think there was probably more positive than negative there with the NWO. Love the logo. I love the promos. Hall and Nash, they had a new lease on life. They looked like they were having fun. Never seen Hogan like this before, so that was great. Yeah, I loved it. It was a great ride, kind of while it lasted, but it just went a little too long.
Well, brother, you have inspired me to leave this thing on a positive note. Maybe they've done more positive than they did harm. So I will leave it at that. Again, legends, it's a legacy that'll never be forgotten. It's often imitated, never quite duplicated. But yeah, the NWO has a place in the pro wrestling, annals of pro wrestling history, as well they should. And again, we'll never forget it. And that's the NWO. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.